Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Ramirez Hacker. I am a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm an epidemiologist by trade. It used to be that nobody knew or understood what an epidemiologist was. I had to tell multiple people that no, I don't study skin. I study infectious disease. Um, and now, uh, pretty much everybody knows what an epidemiologist is, and that's the reason why this lecture is being brought to you from my bedroom. So I wanted to talk about, in this first lecture, just an overview of what we're going to be looking at in this course. This is essentially a survey course where we're going to be looking at biology from the microbiology level and looking at it all the way through to like the biosphere level, and really understanding how biology is connected throughout all these different modes and structures. So I think whenever you take a biology course, you see these types of images where you have something starting out as atoms, they go to molecules, then it leads up to proteins and DNA, and how that is then organized into an organism, a population, a community. And that is essentially what we're going to be doing in this course, is we're going to be looking at each of these levels and how the science of biology is integrated at each of these levels. But I wanted to give you an overview of what that actually means and looks like. So I thought we would start today off with the reason we're here virtually, the coronavirus. So this is a scanning electron microscope image of the coronavirus. So you can see each one of these is a coronavirus. And these are the protein structures that make that sort of stick out design that we've all come to know and understand. But one of the things that we're trying to understand with coronavirus is how to make a vaccine and understanding the molecular mechanisms that make this virus so infectious. So I wanted to give you an example of something that's happening on a structural level in biology right now. So this is an image of the actual protein makeup of one of these protein arms and what that actually looks like. So biologists and structural chemists have been able to go in and actually look at what each individual molecule is doing and how that creates these little arms. And these arms are ultimately important for how the virus enters the cell. So it uses these to gain entry through the cell membrane and ultimately start replicating itself inside the cells. So a big vaccine candidate right now is to disrupt what's happening in these layers. So it's vital that we understand the molecular makeup of these such that we can create potentially a vaccine that would interfere with this, the virus's ability to bind onto that membrane. So if we go out a little farther, still thinking about DNA and molecular structure, an interesting study that was recently published was looking at how the virus we see in humans is related to the viruses that we see in bats. So we know that the coronavirus made a jump from animals and into humans, but where that happened and how that happened is still an ongoing question. So what this graph is showing is it's showing the genetic similarity of the Wuhan HU1 virus compared to viruses in bat DNA and viruses in pangolin, and pangolin specific COVID. So what we can see is that the current virus that was circulating in China is most related to this type of bat coronavirus, followed by similarities in pangolins. So this is an interesting study because it's giving us an idea of like, okay, where did this jump specifically happen? Was it from a bat? Was it from a pangolin? And if so, what kind of bat virus was it? Because there's a lot of COVID types of viruses circulating in bats. So you can see that this one down here, this one in turquoise, this is also a bat coronavirus, but it's not related very much at all to what we're seeing in what is currently circulating in humans. So now we're starting to build a molecular picture of the biology of coronavirus. And we can zoom out even more, still thinking about the genetic structure of the coronavirus, but instead thinking about, well, how is the virus currently evolving and where is it moving to? How are the genetic structures related in all these different areas throughout the world? And so this is an interesting study that's looking at the genetic similarity and differences of the virus around the world. So you can see here where these are located and how similar each of these lineages are. So each one of these is a genetically unique coronavirus. And you can see from there we're actually able to build a picture of where did this virus start, how did it move. So you might have read that the majority of coronavirus in New York is not actually strongly related to the coronavirus in China, but instead it's much more related to the coronavirus that we saw in the outbreak in Italy. So this is the biology that allows us to make those connections of how similar, how different are the coronaviruses we see in different areas. From there, we can zoom out even further. We can start talking about what's actually happening in a group of individuals. So looking at this from a very classical epidemiology study. So one of the big questions that we've had with coronavirus is understanding how dangerous coronavirus is to children and how transmissible the virus is amongst children. Now, we don't have a lot of data on this, just simply because it's difficult to study children. So one of the first and best studies that we've had looking specifically in children is looking at this overnight camp where there was a COVID outbreak. This camp did not require masks, so there were children there from 6 years old to all the way up till 18. So we got a good sample of understanding what a coronavirus outbreak looks like in children, and importantly, what that attack rate was. So in this camp, there were over about 600 people, and there were about 260 that tested positive. So that's an attack rate of about 44%. And you can see that they broke it down by age, they broke it down by staff member or children, and they also broke it down by cabin size. So if you look here, the first thing that I find interesting is there's differences in the age group of who's getting coronavirus. So you can see that we're still getting a really quite high attack rate in young children, despite what other sources may have said that we don't really see a lot of high attack rate or high transmission amongst kids. So this is really showing us, we do have a substantial attack rate that we do need to worry about. And importantly, is just thinking about the crowding and coronavirus, and again, potentially the importance of masks. We see here that in cabins that had a lot of people, we had a much higher attack rate than children who were staying in small cabins. From there, we can continue to zoom out, and we can look at this in terms of what's happening globally. We can see every day from June through August, what the number of new cases are. And we can see that the United States still has the largest amount of cases and the largest amount of deaths. From there, we can move out even farther and ask interesting questions. Okay, so we know what's happening in people. We know how how coronavirus is working in population, what is some of this doing to the environment right now? And this is an interesting image that is using satellite imagery to understand the pollution rates before we had quarantine and after we had quarantine. So you can see that once quarantine is established in the United States, we see a dramatic reduction in the amount of pollution, specifically nitrogen dioxide pollution, throughout the states. So this is the types of questions that we're going to be trying to look at in this class. We're going to understand things that are happening on a microbiological level. We're going to see how that progresses up through a much more global understanding of what biology is. So that's giving you just a quick idea of what the overall goal of this class is going to be, to understand these connections. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the course image. So I study the ecology of infectious disease, so understanding how infectious diseases interact with their environment, potential animal hosts, and how those interactions affect infectious disease. This was a portrait done for a piece in the New York Times a while ago, looking at just visually showing some of these connections, and at the apex is a bat, which is what we are currently working with the coronavirus. Some other just interesting pictures that again went into the class image is this is looking at a spore site on a fern. So this is what actually ferns are essentially. Sorry, there was a problem with my machine. Let me back up. This is an up close image of the spores that are used in replication in ferns. So these actually get moved by water. So water will come onto the fern and start to disperse these sexual gametes so that ferns can reproduce. This is just an interesting picture that's showing birds that are actually expert fishermen. So they rely on these herring populations. And there's been decreases in these populations of fish, which are dramatically affecting this type of seafaring bird. So again, thinking about these different levels, sort of these microbiological levels, to here we have something that is a community level biology, where we have two species of individuals that rely on one another. And lastly, going back down to the micro and really thinking about molecular biology. This is a cross section of a plant cell. So each one of these little circles is a plant cell, and in the center, dyed in red, is actually the DNA from each of those times. So there's times where you can see the DNA a little bit better depending on where it is in the cell replication cycle. And it's another interesting image in terms of thinking, okay, well, not only do we have cellular biology, but we also have molecular biology that's happening within these cells at any given time. So again, when you see a picture like this, I want you to, instead of saying, okay, well, I have to learn molecular biology and then understand organisms, I want you to instead think about how each of these might affect one another. And that's really going to be the goal of this class, is understanding questions between these levels and understanding how to read current trends in biology, because really most biology now is really taking an integrative approach to the study of biology. So looking forward to our time together this semester. It's going to be a little bit different. This is the first time this course has ever been online, so it's going to be a learning experience for me as well as for you. and looking forward to the semester.